Hey, this is Josh Brom with Life Report responding to another piece of listener mail. This one is interesting because I'm not exactly sure all the things that the person is trying to say, but she's doesn't seem super happy with me. So I'm just going to read the email and do my best to respond as well as I can. This is from Lita in Dexter, Michigan. And she says, your characterization of pro-lifers as being uninformed about the facts of life is a little off. Most women do not know they are pregnant until the baby is almost 6 to 8 weeks because the menstrual cycles are very often irregular for a lot of women due to poor diet, etc. Most abortions are done at 8 weeks, which makes the baby a fetus, not an embryo. Since abortion is legal for the whole 9 months, there are many who do wait until the baby is older to abort, like those who have a test later in pregnancy for Down syndrome. Most pro-aborts, her words, not mine, most pro-aborts do not know that abortion is legal for the whole pregnancy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just try to respond sentence by sentence. I'm not sure that I've at least intended to characterize pro-life people as uninformed about the facts of life. And I'm not sure where you're getting that. I know we did an episode very recently on how much do pro-lifers need to know about embryology. And I think this email actually was sent before that episode went out, which is actually interesting. My first instinct was, oh, she saw the embryology show and didn't like it, and then I think the email came before. But in the embryology show, I did say that pro-life people need to know enough about embryology to not say things that are not true, that are not factually incorrect. So that was one of the most recent. You can just go to prolifepodcast.net. It's one of the last 2 episodes to have gone up, at least as of today. If I get this listener mail video out fast enough, then it'll be, one of the last couple of videos. I wrote an article. I was thinking about what have I said about pro-life people in embryology. I'm going back in my head. I did write an article about a short film, a pro-life film called To Be Born, by a guy named Rob Kazmark, who directed it. There were some mistakes that were in that video, or at least there were some strong implications of things. It wasn't like a documentary, flatly stating this happens at this stage. Just there were a lot of implications that I felt, I know are not correct. And I think it's important for pro-life people to kind of know that, so that we don't then, we saw this film and that said this, so I'm going to say the same thing. So I wrote an article about that. So I'll link to both of these things in the blog post. But generally speaking, I don't think of pro-life people as being uninformed about the facts of life. I think generally speaking, in my experience, pro-life people usually know more about embryology than pro-choice people do. Just because of, based on, and this is a total, me evaluating based on what? Based on my 2,000 Facebook friends, most of whom are pro-life. And I watch them, and sometimes I come up with the ideas for show topics of things to do and things not to do. Obviously pro-choice people oftentimes will say things they don't believe, I don't want to say often. I've heard pro-choice people say things like they're not sure that life begins at conception or fertilization. There's not a lot of people that will really dogmatic about that, but they'll, maybe say that it's a nebulous thing, and I don't think it is. So I'm not sure where that sentence is coming from. It might be, I know sometimes people react to me, because it's this weird thing where I've got pro-choice fans and pro-life detractors. It's this odd situation where, I do, on our show we talk about things that I don't think pro-life people should do or say. And I do that because I don't feel like there's really anybody else doing that very much. There's a lot of pro-choice, not a lot. There's several well-known pro-choice people that have written things, saying pro-choice people say this but don't say that, right? And I felt like, and I think that's very interesting, and I think that the pro-life movement needs that too. And so, I feel like there's got to be that voice, and I don't feel like there's really been that voice. So that's it's not the only thing I care about. I think it's kind of becoming part of what I'm known for, because it's one of the few things that makes me maybe unique at this point. So sometimes people take that and react pretty strongly to it. I remember I got an email one time from someone that said, they've seen the most recent episode of Life Report, and it must have been talking about something pro-life people shouldn't do, because there was this whole, we're going to go on using whatever our bad arguments are or whatever. And the implication was that I was actually trying to tell pro-life people not to go and talk about the issue. And as I told her, it's not at all it. I'm just trying to help us to be better at what we do. And this is really important. We should absolutely, but so I'm trying to help young people learn how to communicate their views. I'm trying to help people that are older that have been talking about this a lot in the past to maybe do it better if they're using some of these kind of faulty arguments. But I don't mean to characterize like all pro-life people as stupid or ignorant or anything like that. I just don't think that's true. Okay, the next sentence. So he says, most women do not know they are pregnant until the baby is almost 6 to 8 weeks, because menstrual cycles are very often irregular for a lot of women. I haven't seen any data, like scientific data that shows like when women find out they're pregnant. I think it's certainly true that many women don't find out until after they're 4 weeks. And that would be 4 weeks post-fertilization, so 6 weeks LMP. This is an important note. For those of you that don't know, I've been wanting to cover this in Life Report for a long time. When pro-life people talk about gestational age, we usually mean fertilization age. So if we say the heartbeat begins at 3 weeks, we mean about 3 weeks, but technically 22 days usually, after fertilization. The embryo develops a heart from within itself that at that point begins beating, or the developing heart begins beating would be the most technically accurate way to say it. Most pro-choice people, when they're talking about pregnancy, they're using last menstrual period, because that's what almost everybody else uses, LNP, which is going to be 2 weeks prior to fertilization age. And so there's kind of an important thing where when we're talking about gestational age, defining that. What we mean by that. So she's saying, Lita is saying that women find out they're pregnant till usually about 6 to 8 weeks. I know there's some women that have found they're pregnant as late as 8 weeks. Fertilization, I think that's less often than 4 to 6 weeks, but that's just based on lots of women saying when they found out they were pregnant. And obviously you can get really extreme. There's some women that usually that actually go into labor not having known they were pregnant. And that's kind of rare, unusual situations. So I just don't, I'm not super comfortable saying most women find out they're pregnant at this time, because I just don't have any data. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But regardless, she goes on to say, most abortions are done at 8 weeks, which makes the baby a fetus, not an embryo. Well, as far as I can tell, and I re-looked this up today, we say that a human baby is a fetus at 9 weeks fertilization age, or 11 weeks LMP. I've seen someone else say it's a fetus at 10 weeks, so I've seen 9 and 10 weeks fertilization age. I've never seen anyone say that it becomes a fetus at 8 weeks. So technically, it's still an embryo at 8 weeks, even though when you know about what the baby's doing at 8 weeks, we don't think of the word embryo, because usually when we think embryo, at least in my brain, if that's helpful, when I think embryo, I think of a very young baby, so like around 3, 4, 5 weeks. So, it's weird thinking, maybe it's weird thinking of an 8-week baby as an embryo, but technically, I think that's what the scientific community, or the biological, the embryologists, that community, I think they still call it a fetus until 9 weeks. And if you can find a source that says I'm wrong, then please send it to me. I'd be glad to check it out and say differently. Since abortion is legal for the whole 9 months, there are many who do wait until the baby is older to abort, like those who have a test later in pregnancy for Down syndrome. It's true. Most states, abortion is legal through all 9 months. This is recently, we got to be a little bit more careful about the way we say this now, because in the last few years, some states have passed kind of fetal pain laws that, for the most part, ban abortion after 20 weeks fertilization age. But I don't. That hasn't been passed in most states yet. So most states, technically legal through all 9 months. Yes, that does happen. It's obviously by far the minority of the abortions. It's less than 10%. Doesn't mean it's. I don't want to necessarily call it rare. You're still talking about 10 or more thousand a year. I also don't want to characterize it as most people doing something, or I don't even know if I want to. It depends on how you're using the word many. I try to be careful with my words, and I feel like maybe I'm being nitpicky here. I think if I'm talking to a pro-choice person, I say that many women wait until later because of like Down syndrome and stuff, then what they're going to hear in their head is most. And so I'm going to I'll probably be more specific, like this amount of women approximately a year or whatever. The Down syndrome stat is hard. A lot of pro-life people or websites will say that 90% of Down syndrome babies are aborted. In fact, I used to say the same thing. I no longer think that we have enough data to say that conclusively. I think we can say that a lot of Down syndrome babies are aborted, but I don't think we have any data that's conclusive enough for us to say 90% anymore. So I don't say that anymore. Certainly it does happen. So I'm agreeing. Usually late-term abortions, as far as I know, usually they happen because of a problem with the child, like Down syndrome or some other kind of a physical or even mental quote-unquote defect, or some kind of a health concern for the mother. Not always a like her life's in danger, but some kind of a health issue. I know that's not always the case. I know there's a late-term abortionist that stood in front of, during the partial birth abortion ban debate. He said that he did a lot of elective late-term abortions, so I don't know what's going on there. So there's something between that and, there's a lot of other stuff that says it's mainly health stuff, either fetal defects or maternal health. So I'm not exactly, obviously it's kind of hard to know exactly what's going on there because you've got this conflicting data. But certainly that does happen, so I'm agreeing with that. This, he says, most pro-aborts do not know that abortion is legal for the whole pregnancy. I agree that most pro-abortion choice people, which is the term that I prefer, and when in doubt, I just say pro-choice. I agree that most people that I've talked to have not known or thought that abortion was generally legal for all 9 months of pregnancy. You have to qualify it a little bit, but when you take a look at the way Dovey Bolton defines health, it's pretty broad. And that's why pro-life people say abortion legal through all 9 months. I think for all intents and purposes, that's true. And most people don't know that. Like when I've done interviews with media that's not like Christian radio type stuff, I don't think I've met one person that interviewed me that knew that was true. So I think that's a very important thing for people to be talking about. I think it makes for a great question you can be asking people. What do you think about late-term abortions? Because you can often find common ground. Many pro-choice people think late-term abortions should be illegal, or are at least wrong. Morally, so you can maybe start a good conversation that way. You can talk about that, and then if you find the common ground, then kind of work your way back. At what point do you think abortion is okay, and why, and stuff like that. That can be a very good conversation starter. I don't like the term pro-abort just because it sounds mean. It sounds like we're calling them a bad word. I know people like the term pro-abortion. I don't. I've got an article about that. I'm just going to link to the article. I would rather not debate about the terms and just define the terms we're using. Generally speaking, when people say pro-choice, they mean someone that thinks generally that abortion should be legal. And then pro-life generally means someone who thinks abortion should be illegal. And then but there are exceptions to that. So I'm just going to define the term. This is what I mean when I say I think pro-abortion choice, so that would be like one word, but like 2 hyphens, pro-abortion choice is a very fair characterization of where people are at. I just think pro-abortion kind of implies that people like abortion. And some people think I'm off on that, and that's fine. This is just what I've chosen to do. I've seen too many people begin a conversation like a college campus with a pro-choice person or a pro-abortion choice person or whatever, and it's just like a 30-second debate on what we're going to call each other, and then like the guy walks off. And it was like, that just seemed like a big waste of time, or it's not even just a waste of time. It's like, look at the opportunity you just had to make a difference in this person's life, but because you couldn't agree to just call the guy what his side tends to call themselves, and not actually, like, you didn't end up getting to talk about the real issue, which is what is the unborn and how should we treat them, and what about bodily autonomy, and what about privacy, and what about the government's role in this, and all those good questions and good discussions that we can be having. We debated about whether we're going to call you a pro-abort or not, and then you walked off angry. I just have seen that happen too many times to want to keep using that term. So anyway, I hope that helps. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm having a hard time understanding exactly what your point is, Lita. So I don't mean to mischaracterize you or act like I'm a know-it-all or like you're like this. It's not. I don't think this is a mean email or anything. I'm just not exactly sure what else I can say about this. But feel free to email me back, and I will try to respond better to anything else that you want to say. I'm Josh Brom, and you can check out our website at prolifepodcast.net. Thanks.